Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. Dada. With episode 768 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Friday. So you know exactly what that means. We are here to break down everything that happened across NXT and AEW this week, just about 24 hours later than normal. Actually, way less than 24 hours later, but still delayed. We usually publish this show on Thursday. It happens to be out Friday this week. Silver King was busy Wednesday night celebrating my birthday, having an incredible dinner in Palm Beach, Florida. But even beyond that, I have not slept in pretty much a week. A combination of all the shows of professional wrestling, obviously, that we've covered here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast, Saturday and Sunday, plus just an extremely busy week. The Open Championship currently happening, the fourth golf major of the year, and I hurt my hip or some type of washed bullshit, so I haven't been able to get comfortable in bed. My dog's been sick, so there's been 3-4 hour sleep nights, and it just really caught up with me. So Thursday was spent sleeping, napping basically during the day, watching some golf, and just not watching wrestling is frankly what it was. So I got the opportunity finally to watch AEW Dynamite Friday morning, and we are here to tape this show. So off the top, allow me to remind you, the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
Please head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we'll read it live right here on the show. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Not only do you get full-length audio episodes, you also get full-length video interviews. And this week, the Silver King got the opportunity to sit down one-on-one with TNA Wrestling President Carlos Silva. We published a special episode of the show on Wednesday, which is in your podcast feed. You can listen to it right now. You can also watch the Silver King go one-on-one with Silva, not Anderson, but Carlos, on our YouTube channel at Getting Overcast. Really great interview, I thought, and I hope you all agree. Had some great conversations about Slammiversary, his foray into professional wrestling, tease about AJ Styles showing up this weekend, and I asked a bunch of detailed questions about the WWE and TNA relationship. I thought we got some insight, perhaps not as much as I would have loved, but of course he's only going to say so much. He's not going to give us all the secret sauce behind the scenes. But nevertheless, I appreciate TNA and Carlos Silva for giving us the time and opportunity to speak with him, and I hope all of you have a chance to watch or listen to that interview. I also remind you to follow us on social media, at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky, for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. You can also send in questions and comments for the show. I saw a lot of birthday wishes come in, questions. I was so tired, I didn't have a chance to get to any of them, but I appreciate all of you so much for reaching out. My birthday is not necessarily something I hugely celebrate. It just so happened that this week we were able to do a special birthday show, given the timing of the interview and when I needed to publish that episode. But regardless, I appreciate all those messages. I will also remind you, here's one way, if you want to celebrate the Silver King's birthday, you can do it by remembering
I happen to love the number 5.
And I hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis posts every week. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. I know we've gone a couple weeks without the news analysis type of post. It's just been, again, a timing thing. All the programming that we've been giving you, the new episodes and stuff, just work as well. And also there hadn't been that much news, so I didn't want to put out something kind of half-assed. That post will be coming today, Friday, July 18th, so we will be right back at it, and I appreciate all of your patience for those of you who have signed up and continue to support us. With that said, let's get into today's episode. The first half is going to be NXT. The second half is going to be AEW, which is pretty much how we always do it. We will be taking second looks at both NXT Great American Bash and AEW All in Texas. Both of them are going to be extremely brief. We're going to focus on the TV shows themselves, and let's just make this a nice, tight, compact episode. That way you can listen to it Friday, Saturday, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Also, just a note, there will be timestamps in the episode description, wherever you're listening to this podcast. So if you want to jump to AEW or come back to NXT, whatever the case might be, you will be able to do it. As always, though, I hope you listen to the entire show. So quickly, NXT Great American Bash second look. I forgot to mention on the Instant Analysis podcast, I loved the red, white, and blue ropes and the gray aesthetic. I wasn't a huge fan of the massive NXT logo in the middle of the ring. I'd prefer like an outline, but the setup looked great. The lights all around center stage were blue and red. It was just really cool. Jordynne Grace and Blake Monroe against JC Jane and Fallon Henley. The way WWE has introduced Blake, it's been nearly perfect. She's crazy over. Immediately in the main event scene, already a dynamo in the ring. This is the match that I seem to be rating higher than others, but I was all about the work from these four women. Henley gets overlooked to such a crazy degree. That said, I am moving down to 3.75 stars B+. I think I had it a little bit high in the first place. It was the perfect setup to Evolution, though, for the Jordynne Grace and Blake Monroe split, and that, played into this as well. Just seeing Blake get the win and all four of them wrestle as well as they did. NXT Championship, Obafemi successfully defending against Yoshiki Inamura, 3.75 stars B+. This could have been a killer match with 5 more minutes and no interference. It was on its way to that. Let's just say that as I tape this Friday morning, I've seen some low grades for this NXT Great American Bash show. And if that rating system scale that Chris mentioned a couple episodes ago that I don't really like to talk about here, if you didn't think that had jumped the shark, then the ones that came out on Friday, July 18th, should tell you that it jumped the shark. It's pretty much all I can say. North American Championship, Ethan Page against Ricky Saints, falls count anywhere. I went 4.25 stars and an A. If you're at an A-, that's okay, but it was definitely at that level. I explained coming into Great American Bash why I love Falls Count Anywhere as a stipulation, specifically in intimate theater-like settings. This match completely delivered to the point I was making on the Ultimate Preview. It was a great blow-off match. Their ability to keep the action hot despite moving about the arena, that deserves praise. Tough to do, and ultimately the best match on the card and the best WWE match of the entire day, Saturday. Ethan Page and Ricky Saints. North American Championship, Sol Ruca against Izzy Dame. This was Izzy's best match in NXT to date. She got a lot of upside. It was actually one of Sol's worst singles matches lately, but I was at a B, 3.5. If you want to argue 3.25, sure, but it was a B-level match. Totally fine. And then lastly, Javon Evans, Jasper Troy. No question, Javon should be the one to dethrone Oba. The only tough part is his age, but he's been such a quick study. Maybe that's the move you make, especially now that he got this win. I was at 3.25 stars B. Again, if you're slightly lower at a B-, acceptable. Any lower than that, I don't really know what you watched. Let's go ahead and break down everything that happened Tuesday on NXT. Trick Williams, Joe Hendry, and Mike Santana fought Dark State in a 6-man match. Santana was on fire at the bell. He had a rolling double cutter after the break. Hendry got the hot tag. That left Williams pouting on the apron. There was a really dumb spot where Saquon Sugars just jumped into the arms of Hendry, I think it was, for a fallaway slam. Trick yelled at his partners for not getting him involved, so they both punched him and then took out the heels over the top rope. While the faces were ringside, they were just standing there. The system from TNA ran down to attack Dark State for disqualification. I know Dark State attacked Matt Cardona on TNA, so perhaps the system are part of that storyline. But as someone who is not able to watch that show weekly, or at least I didn't think I was, this was a shrug to me, just given the faces were not exactly in trouble at the moment this interference happened. I wish I had more to say about this other than that Sugars needs to be put in a better spot and fast. I assume that's going to be an 8-man at TNA. That was my thought coming out of this. Trick later confronted Team Undertaker from LFG, big timing all of them. One of the dudes stepped up to him, and I suppose they're going to do a singles match next week. I'll talk about it later, but the force feeding of LFG and Evolve on NXT, it is really starting to become frustrating. I get promotion, and if you want to have them on occasionally to promote big shows, cool. But having them on every single week and then having TNA talent on, what about NXT talent? What about building all these background NXT stories, which is why we love this show so much? It was really rough on this particular episode, and the LFG thing was such forced promotion. Like, it was almost as if Trick said, hey, make sure to watch the show on A&E every Sunday at 8 p.m. or whatever time it's on. By the way, speaking of LFG, I haven't seen the final, 4 episodes of the first season and nothing on season 2. I actually really like the show, but A&E is not available on YouTube TV and Fubo, both of which I have. I can't download it. I'm not going to pay for a subscription. And, I'm not trying to shit talk or anything, but the fine folks over at A&E were very helpful for a while, getting us episodes that we could review. And then they just stopped. So now I can't watch it. I'll try to figure out a way. Maybe the high seas are calling for me. But one way or another, I would like to continue watching LFG. And I heard season 1 ended nicely. Now, look, all this said, The Undertaker is going to be on NXT next week. And that's pretty cool. You know, they're going to be in Houston. He lives in Texas. That makes sense. JC Jane opened the show still hoarse from Great American Bash, criticizing Fallon Henley and Jasmine Nix for dropping the ball at that show before praising them for coming through at Evolution. Jane turned to Masha Slamovich and their winner-take-all match at TNA Slammiversary, saying she'd walk out of New York with both titles. Masha showed up recounting what happened last weekend before saying she'd become the first TNA wrestler to hold the NXT Women's Championship. That brought out Zaruka, basically saying it was their weekend and they had Masha's back. Fatal Influence tried to wedge drive. That led to a brawl that resulted in, obviously, a 6-woman tag team match. Between Masha's microphone not working, the faces entering early, production really did not help these ladies along at all. The segment was fine, but NXT has not done enough building toward this winner-take-all match for us to be invested in Slamovich at all. And that's problematic when you're trying to get people to watch a pay-per-view. The most notable person here, most notable positive here, was Soul. She got to cut a promo, and that pretty much never happened. She sounded fine on the mic. Let's give her more opportunities. So we had Masha, Soul, and Zarya against Fatal Influence. Izzy Dame came across Tatum Paxley watching Zaruka backstage. Tatum freaked out, thinking she'd be mad at her for everything that happened Saturday, but Izzy said they'd always be friends, which melted Paxley's heart, gave her an idea for what to do next. Lexus King watched from the crowd with noise-canceling headphones, so Ava came out through the crowd and pulled him backstage for some reason, but I couldn't figure out why. What was problematic about this man being out there with headphones on during a women's match? He wasn't going to interfere. He was just sitting there. Why did she have to bring him back? He was a child who ran out of the room and didn't tell the mother. You know, it was very odd. Anyway, Masha got the hot tag, rep chop until Influence caught her with a flapjack. Soul hit her a really dumb straight leg backstabber. That move needs to be retired. A backstabber with knees makes a lot of sense. The straight leg stuff, it really looks bad. And it could be something that injures you. She has a knee injury that she's coming back from still. Why is she doing that move? I cannot understand it. Jasmine caught her with Nick's kick only to get speared by Zarya while she was celebrating. That was actually kind of funny. Culling came down to ringside, so Zaruka both hit flying cannonballs on both the women, with Hank and Tank fighting the men. That left Slamovich alone with the heels, but she was able to hit Jane with her Northern Lights bomb, and she ended the show on top. Really chaotic finish. I'm not sure what plan Tatum was talking about. All they did was walk out there, so how is that some genius plan? I'm also not sure why Soul took her out right away when I don't believe she dislikes her in storyline yet. Masha looked damn strong here, which could definitely speak to the match at Slammiversary, but that's something we'll come back to a little bit later. Another positive note is that Jasmine was back in action, so she must have been cleared while sidelined, or she was sidelined for a while. The women opening and closing NXT, after getting the first hour of Raw, was not lost on me, and I wondered coming out of this show whether that would hold on SmackDown this week, whether the women would open all 3 shows and I don't want to say get the dominant share of TV time because they didn't, but it was notable on Raw how much they got off the start, and certainly the fact that they opened and closed NXT. Carmen Petrovic and Ariana Grace were talking about not being in the Evolution Battle Royal when Callie Armstrong, the Evolve Women's Champion, came in laughing at them, saying she should have gotten a bid. Petrovic wasn't having that, and it led to not just a match, but a title challenge. I had no idea why. I mean, I understand why Evolve people are on NXT, as I said earlier, to promote the show. But an unearned title challenge with hardly any build between 2 people not regularly on TV, that is not why viewers are tuning into NXT coming out of Great American Bash. They want to see the people who are on that show and what's happening to their storylines going forward, plus their other favorite people on NXT. It really seemed like an odd decision. So we had an Evolve Women's Championship match, Armstrong against Petrovic. Moments after the match began, Jordynne Grace, who we saw storm through the parking lot into the arena a couple of minutes earlier, pulled Armstrong out of the ring by her leg, marked her with a back fist for a DQ. Then she squashed Petrovic with her stretch muffler suplex, refusing to leave the ring until Blake Monroe explained herself. Robert Stone and Stevie Turner came out instead. The Titantron played a narrated video package saying Blake believed Jordynne wasn't good enough to carry her shoes, let alone the women's championship. Monroe then appeared in a bathtub saying she's invited to watch her singles debut next week. The music changed to foreboding sounds as she said Grace would learn the difference between them. Jordynne reacted by attacking the authority figures, with Stone convulsing like his head had been cracked open or something. I mean, he just got punched. It wasn't that big of a deal. But this was much better, don't get it twisted, than running that match for no reason whatsoever. I presume it either happened or will happen on Evolve, and this was kind of billed for that, but I don't know. I'd have preferred Jordynne just wrecking shop backstage on her way to the ring as opposed to doing the whole match setup, which wasted time on a show that could have used it in another way. But okay, whatever. It did feel like a miss to not have Blake fully on the show, cutting a longer promo, given she made such an impact Sunday at a WWE main roster PLE. But a heel cutting a promo like that on video, classic wrestling. Plus, seeing Grace that enraged, it was really interesting and positive for her direction. Tavian Heights backstage was angry at Ren Sinclair for throwing in the towel last week, but she correctly pointed out to him that she was saving him from being seriously hurt. He told her he's not focused on leaving NQCC, but being able to succeed as an individual. Charlie Dempsey came in. The mood completely became more somber. Ren announced she was going to be fighting Blake in her home state of Texas. She said she wanted them in her corner, but it was up to them. Finally, Sinclair got some damn agency. She was able to stand up for herself and get what she wants. I love that. I'm not exactly sure where they're going with Heights and NQCC, but it's being booked a lot better than what happened with the D'Angelo family breakup. And I'm happy Red's getting this match. But speaking of D'Angelo family, we had Tony D'Angelo, Stacks, and Luca Crucifino in a triple threat. There was an extended multi-part video package on NXT recounting the entire D'Angelo family storyline. High energy at the bell. D'Angelo did the hip toss tope callback, throwing Stacks into Crucifino by the announce table. Stacks introduced the crowbar. It was not used initially. D'Angelo jumped over the ropes for a double German suplex. Crucifino based a Tower of Doom. D'Angelo rolled through a move to buckle bomb Stacks. Crucifino went on a nice run with a single leg codebreaker while running off the ropes. Stacks and Crucifino combined for Shatter Machine on Tony D for a false finish. Stacks tried to fully swing the crowbar at Crucifino. He ducked. D'Angelo caught him blind with a spear through the crow's nest. The crowd went apeshit, so the broadcast got muted, which sucked because D'Angelo from inside the crow's nest yeeted Stacks out of it into the ringside area, exactly like Uncle Phil would throw Jazz on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And credit to Vic Joseph for making that exact reference live. D'Angelo did the almighty spinebuster on Crucifino through the announce table, which exploded, crazy spot. And then he did it again to Stacks, who was already dead, through the middle of the ring to stand tall and win the triple threat. This match over-delivered to such a degree, it was ridiculous. The storyline getting here was largely awful, outside of a random okay moment here or there. The match was solid throughout, but the final 3 minutes, and particularly the finish, were simply outstanding. I watched the replay of Stacks getting yeeted probably 4 or 5 times. D'Angelo winning made a lot of sense in this case because of what happened in the post-match. Now, commentary didn't exactly mention it, but he left his hat on top of the ring post, looked back at it, and then walked off. The crowd chanted his name, and Corey Graves mentioned how this should be a new beginning for him. If so, what a way to go out as the Don. He did exactly what a mob boss should do. Flexed and straight up defenestrated everyone who crossed him. What's going to be curious to see is whether this is a change coming for him in NXT or it's part of an official main roster call-up. Hopefully the latter, because he's definitely ready. But if that's the case, what the hell is this gimmick going to look like? And will it work? Also, what are they now going to do with Stacks and Crucifino? I said this, I believe, last week. You have to repackage all 3 guys. You can't have Stacks in his role. You can't have Crucifino as the new consigliere. Like, you have to just get rid of the Italian mobster gimmick. Probably for all 3 guys, but at least for D'Angelo and probably Crucifino. Stacks, you could keep in there if you have other people who are ready to step up, but I don't know that they do. So we'll see. This was 3.5 stars B, easily the match of the night on NXT. Josh Briggs at the ring saying he did everything he could to help Yoshiki Inamura, who didn't want to win as bad as Briggs wanted him to win. Briggs was simultaneously angry that Inamura had an NXT title match on a WWE PLE when he had been there for 4 years, putting on bangers and not getting a single chance. His point was, when you get an opportunity, you do what you need to do by any means necessary. Obafemi interrupted, saying he would have won either way Saturday, but Briggs' jealousy ruined the match, and it has people questioning the validity of his win. Briggs said Femi's been taken to his limit regularly recently, and he's about to break. Briggs confirmed he's not a man of honor like Inamura, who came out saying not to speak for him. Oba said Yoshi deserves a rematch. Briggs said he only wants to give him one because he knows Inamura won't do what it takes to win. So Briggs challenged for a triple threat. A brawl commenced. Inamura took an inadvertent friendly fire shot from Briggs. That led to them getting in a shoving match before being separated by officials. I'd have liked to see Briggs and Inamura fully break up before Femi got involved, just given the talk for much of the segment was basically Briggs still putting over his boy, but just calling him soft by comparison. Maybe that's being saved. They don't want to fully blow up until the triple threat match is over. This was extremely well put together from a character motivation standpoint. Briggs has legitimately struggled to get opportunities. Inamura should be angry about not being allowed to finish with honor. And Femi should be bothered about his win not coming off clean, given how he purports himself as champion. So I thought this was really strong, and I don't necessarily understand. It's one thing to boo Briggs because he's a heel, but I don't understand the fan sentiment toward him, where they dislike him. They don't think he's talented. He's really good. I mean, he's talented in the ring. He's capable on the mic. Big dude. Yeah, so I hope he gets more and better, feature time in NXT. Ethan Page got a promo package explaining how Canada Day, the 4th of July, and his win over Ricky Saints were all major holidays in July. Page said he deserved the celebration and could not think of a better place to do it than in Houston next week. Saints backstage put over his own performance Saturday, blaming some of his loss on Jasper Troy, saying his uncontrollable rage would cost him next week when he finds out Saints is everything he says he is. Both well done in completely different ways. Page was a perfect smarmy prick. Saints probably cut his most composed and thematic promo since joining WWE. Looking forward to both of these segments. Ava backstage verbally ran down Jasper for getting involved in the North American Championship match, saying it was unacceptable. She said he can prove himself in the matches she books for him and nowhere else. Troy explained correctly that someone ran into him, so he was just answering back. Ava booked Jasper against Saints next week in Houston, and I think it's a surprising booking. Saints going over Troy after Javon Evans did, two much smaller guys beating him. That would need to lead to some serious introspection for this dude. If the idea is for Saints to lose, then it's going to need to be his final night in NXT, going out on his back to Troy after he loses to Page. So there's only two options here. Either it propels Saints into the main event and he eventually goes and fights Obafemi in short order, or he loses and he's done in NXT. It was nice seeing Ava show some backbone, actually try to lay down the law for a change. That was positive. Lash Legend gassed herself up, given how she performed at Evolution. She said she'd be ready to greet the double champ coming out of Slammiversary. Jada Parker slid in, putting herself over, reminding that the Evolution crowd was chanting her name, and she'd be the one doing the confronting next week. Nice little backstage deal with them. I'd be down for that one-on-one feud. It's still crazy to me, though, that Jada is without a title in NXT. We need to strap her up and fast. North American Championship should be around Jada's waist. I would say by the time we get to the heat of football season. Let's put it that way. Now, we did a TNA Slammiversary preview on our special Wednesday show, so be sure to listen to that if you're interested. And there is a lot of NXT talent on that show, so you might be. I wound up watching TNA Impact on Thursday since it was the go-home, and I also learned that it's available free on YouTube as long as you watch live, which was pretty cool. So on a Thursday night where I don't have much stuff to do, and whatever they announce for it is interesting, I might tune in here and there. That said, it was an okay go-home. There are a few NXT and WWE related notes from that show. I'll mention them here, but then we'll just move on. Dark State attacked the system as retribution for what happened Tuesday. Then they attacked Matt Cardona. That set up a 4-way match. So Dark State is going to get a match on TNA's biggest show of the year, which I think is pretty interesting. They put Alicia Fox with Tessa Blanchard, which is just crazy, but that's what they're doing. The Hardys cut a promo basically saying their time was winding down, and if they don't win the titles again, perhaps that's it for them. I didn't know that this was their angle when I made my pick on the preview, so I'm actually going to flip it from the Rascals in this 4-way ladder match to the Hardys. I know they're bound to come back to WWE for a retirement run and a Hall of Fame induction eventually, but I assume they'll get these titles before that happens. It might even happen concurrently, where they win these titles, hold them, get inducted as TNA champions. That would be pretty interesting. There was other people on the show, obviously, JC Jane, Trick Williams. I didn't think it's anything worth mentioning here. You can, watch that show if you so choose. And of course, Slammiversary is this weekend. So that will be interesting to watch. I don't know if I'm going to watch it live or not, but I will watch it. And I'll probably be able to discuss it next Thursday when we talk NXT and AEW, unless something happens that is main roster relevant, which is possible. Because as we teased on Wednesday's show, and they gave a legitimate teaser for on Thursday night's show, TNA. AJ Styles is going to be at Slammiversary, making his return to the company. Obviously, one of, if not the favorite for TNA fans. So that's going to be pretty cool. I would love to see, like, he's out there getting honored or something, and then Dominic Mysterio comes in and they brawl, and that's how Dominic gets cleared. It would be pretty interesting if they did that. I don't know if WWE is going to do a full main roster crossover deal. They haven't done that yet. I also wanted to mention, just before we get to AEW, that there was a match held in AAA. Mr. Iguana and La Hydra, excuse my pronunciation, I'm not sure how to say that, against Santino Marella and Lola Vice. In other words, it was La Yesca against the Cobra. And this is free. It's available on YouTube. I think I tweeted it at Getting Overcast and posted it on Blue Sky at Getting Over. I'm not saying it's an incredible match. Obviously, it's not. But if you ever liked Cobra or Yesca in the little that you've seen of her, I suggest watching it because it is entertaining. And you can get through it. I think it's like 15 minutes. You get through it really fast. I was going to do a whole breakdown of this in Spanish. I thought better of it. So you guys can just enjoy it on your own. So with that said, let's move over to the AEW portion of the show. We're going to start with an AEW All In Texas second look, go match by match, just like we did for NXT. Then we'll break down the entire week. Trios titles, the Ops against Death Riders and Gabe Kidd. 3 stars, B-. This is a downgrade from my original grade. It was just 2 notable spots and a quite basic finish. It was the wrong opener, despite the storyline of knocking the Ops out. Could still have done that in the 3rd match or 4th match on the card, but it's fine. AEW Championship, Jon Moxley against Hangman Page in a Texas death match, 4.5 stars A. My only change here is that it is now my match of the night after rewatch. Not for the bell-to-bell work, but rather the storytelling, the callbacks, the Avengers Assemble shtick. What it was not was WrestleMania 40. And I do wonder in retrospect why AEW booked the main event of its biggest show to basically be a facsimile of that. Seeing ratings online, this is being severely overrated. Moxley completely carried this match. He was perfect. We've seen Hangman wrestle incredibly well, but this was all about the heel and the baby faces helping the challenger, not the challenger himself. At least that's how it felt to me on rewatch. This is currently a top 50 match all time on Cage Match, above stuff like TLC at WrestleMania X7, Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay in 2023, both Shawn Michaels Undertaker matches, among others. That's an absolute joke, okay? Looking at the weekend as a whole, it was probably the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th best match across Saturday and Sunday. And if you include the Ring of Honor show, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, because that match with Bandito and Konosuke Takeshita was incredible, and it was better than this. Let's just be very clear about that. Women's Championship, Toni Storm against Mercedes Moné, 4.5 stars A. The only change I have here is I no longer believe it was the match of the night. It was definitely the best wrestling match on the show, like bell to bell. But as I just said, the main event, it was such a spectacle. It did carry the evening. So that was my big switch here. Unified Championship, Kenny Omega International against Kazuchika Okada Continental, 4.25 stars and an A. I said it on the instant analysis. Going any higher than this is being flatly dishonest as far as I'm concerned. There were brief bursts of greatness surrounding an otherwise normal match. When Omega and Okada get in the ring together, it needs to be more. And while both have certainly taken a step back physically, especially Kenny, we've seen them wrestle better matches against other people recently. The Omega Gabe Kidd match this year was better. And he's had even more time to get healthy since that. This is probably a 4-star match I'm giving extra credit to because it's my favorite rivalry match series of all time, but it's not higher than a 4.25. And it was a huge disappointment compared to execution. Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay against the Young Bucks, 4.25 stars A minor downgrade. You'll remember I called it like 4.35 on the instant analysis between the 2 numerical grades I give for an A. I had to go with the lower one. This is just personal preference. It's not my style by any means, and certainly not the most interesting result that could have been conjured. The no-selling was atrocious, and it never reached a crescendo in the finish. What this match accomplished was drastically upping the energy on the card. It was the inflection point for the second half of the show to actually deliver. It was also the only match other than the main event that was booked in its appropriate spot. So I enjoyed this match. Don't get it twisted. I saw it get called one of the best United States tag team matches of all time, and I am simply wondering what type of drugs that person is using. Because AEW has had 10 better tag team matches, 5 better tag team matches than this. WWE this year alone has had 1. The TLC match was apples to apples better than this in every possible way. So yeah, I just don't know how that's possible. Men's Casino Gauntlet featuring Mark Briscoe, MJF. They were the first 2. 3 stars, B-. I stand by this. It was the worst Casino Gauntlet AEW has put on, but it was particularly disappointing given the insane level of talent that was involved. It wasn't the worst match on the show, but it was definitely the most boring, and that's incredibly tough to do given it had strong build coming in. And again, great talent involved. Women's Casino Gauntlet featuring Chris Statlander, Megan Bayne is the first 2. 4 stars, A-. I had no further notes here. Really good and fun match. Tag Team Championship, Hurt Syndicate against Jet Speed, Christian Cage, and Nick Wayne. 3.25 stars, B. Slight downgrade here as well. It was just solid. That's all. All of it was frustrating from the build to the match, the construction, the post-match, all of it. TNT Championship, obviously this was changed. Kyle Fletcher, Sammy Guevara, Dustin Rhodes, Daniel Garcia for the vacant title. 2.5 stars, C. Slight downgrade for me. I think the moment at the end with Dustin is why I gave it extra credit initially. The bout itself was average, and it had no business going as long as the trios match. It was ridiculous that this went the length it did. I also want to circle back real quick before we get to the rest of AEW on the Adam Cole situation. So all reports right now are that it's concussion-related issues. And, you know, I don't know how to put this because he had been dealing with the concussion so regularly that the moment in the ring seemed like it was a more dramatic injury or health issue than further concussion symptoms when we didn't have any idea he recently had another concussion, if that makes sense, right? So it seemed more dramatic than it would be for a concussion. That said, head injuries are extremely dangerous. And as we've seen with numerous people who have concussion issues long-term, you don't necessarily have to have a new concussion to get knocked around, start having symptoms again, and be concerned about your life and your career. So Cole pulling himself out of this match, I respect it. That's really tough to do as a professional, as an entertainer. And I'm sure it's an extremely scary situation for him. No question about that. Doing further research on this, it looks like when he wrestled, I think it was on the Go Home Collision, he took a lariat from Kyle Fletcher, I believe it was. It actually may have been someone else other than Kyle Fletcher, excuse me. But he took a lariat that basically hit him in the upper chest, neck, jaw area. And it seemed to throw him for a loop. And my guess is coming out of that match, he didn't feel well. And therefore, the next morning, he woke up not feeling well. And then he pulled himself out of it. You'll remember just a couple weeks ago, he took that apron bomb spot that never should have been allowed. And that one was from Fletcher, too far away. And the back of his head hit the ring apron. And people screamed, no, it was just his arm. Didn't you see it? I went over that shit like a Zapruder film. His head hit the ring apron. Okay? Now, maybe he didn't get a concussion from it and he was okay. Fingers crossed. I hope that's the case. His head hit the thing. So, I don't know that Cole has been protected as well as he should be for a guy coming back from such serious long-term concussion issues. And now he's out. And I wish the best for him. I hope he gets back as soon as possible. But I understand the concern, and I understand why, for him specifically, he addressed things the way he did. I just hope he's able to get back in the ring because he's a really talented wrestler. At some point, though, you have to think about your future and your life and make that determination. Is it worth it? Or can I potentially, if you believe what Bryan Danielson says, he says he healed himself from his concussion-related issues. So maybe he can follow that path and get back in a few years like Danielson did once he fully recovered. Fingers crossed for Adam Cole. Let's move into the full breakdown of AEW this week. Before we get into the match-by-match, mostly from Dynamite, I wanted to speak to this residency decision in Chicago. AEW is running something called the Byline Bank Aragon Ballroom for 3 weeks of shows. First, what needs to be said is it looks phenomenal on TV. Columns, the little theater balconies. It looks great. I'm into the venue and the decision to do a residency here, theoretically. What I struggle to understand is A, why AEW would run a venue in which they cannot fit more than 1,500 people for the Dynamite immediately after All In, their biggest show of the entire year, and why they would run a venue that small in Chicago, which has historically been their best market. That's B, of course. Are you really telling me that AEW couldn't sell 5,000, 7,000 tickets to the Dynamite immediately after All In at like one of the larger arenas in the area, at least for one night, and then you do the residency on the back end? If that's the case, then their attendance truly is a concern, despite the one-off at All In. Again, this venue looks great. I'm all for cost savings and everything else, but for this show, this week, coming out of All In, I don't get that decision at all. In terms of match relevancy, 3 of 5 on Collision, which was an improvement, except it was followed by 1 of 4 on Dynamite after All In, which should have been a loaded and hugely relevant show. So for the week, 4 out of 9, under 50% surrounding the biggest pay-per-view of the year. Not great, Bob. I received bad news in the middle of the show I wanted to share at the top here. To this point, I had only known that I shared a birthday with Barry Sanders and Bobby Lashley, which made me proud of July 16th. Turns out I also share it with Excalibur. And that's unfortunate. Joking, joke serious probably. I digress. On Dynamite, Hangman Page opened the show getting a hero's introduction from Tony Schiavone. The fans chanted, "You deserve it." He flipped it, saying they deserve it. Hangman turned it into something about AEW, calling it a grassroots, do-it-yourself approach to pro wrestling. I'm not sure I would say a billionaire starting a wrestling company with an investment from his even wealthier father is grassroots. Do-it-yourself, sure, I'll give you that one. It went on from there along the same lines, with Hangman thanking all the faces who fought Death Riders: Orange Cassidy, Jay White, Adam Copeland. I thought he was no longer going by Cope after this. The Ops, Bryan Danielson, Darby Allin, Will Ospreay, and after a delay, Swerve Strickland. And then he ended it saying, "I am the champion of the effing world," except he said the whole word and it got bleeped. Also didn't mention Mark Briscoe and a couple other people who did fight them, by the way. Look, it was a solid enough babyface promo to start the show for a new champion, and I liked the emphatic close to get the crowd going. It was a bit try-hard, but it was also like the same stuff every AEW babyface says after they win a title. They try to make it about AEW at large to rally support for the company versus concentrating on their actual battle and character storyline and achievement. I wanted to know more about what his goals are now going forward as champion. It would have been nice to see someone step up as the next challenger, or have MJF come out, threaten with Hurt Syndicate, something. Does MJF have it in his contract that he never works TV immediately after pay-per-views? It's crazy how he is never on these shows. Making matters worse is that Hangman was right back in a trios match with Death Riders in the main event of the show. Why? Page won the title. They got vanquished. They also lost a trios match on that show. Can you imagine if Roman Reigns came out on Raw the night after WrestleMania 40? It was odd enough The Rock did, if you remember. On Dynamite, the Syndicate cut a promo after All in Texas, with MVP begging for a legendary tag team to step up and challenge them, suggesting everyone was scared. MJF said he was happy Hangman won because he has something to prove against him, as opposed to Jon Moxley, whom he'd have just pinned immediately at the end of that match. He screamed, "I am the best in the world," and he called himself the physical embodiment of your depression, referring to Page, obviously. Good promo from MJF as usual. What MVP said about the tag teams, well, look, this has been the case since you guys won the titles. The booking has been an absolute joke. It'll be interesting to see whether FTR and or the Young Bucks wind up going after them, and if so, can you make Syndicate the clear face in that feud? You should be able to. It's clear to me, crystal clear, that the plan is for Syndicate to drop the titles to Edge and Christian Cage in Canada. I would be shocked if it's anything but that. On Dynamite, Mark Briscoe cut a backstage promo at MJF. He was serious the entire time. Well, after calling him a bitch in joking fashion to start. He promised to make him pay for his sins. This is the third or fourth week in a row I've said this. Serious, or at least mostly serious, Briscoe kicks the shit out of the manic comedy redneck. Better on the mic, better as a character, even better in the ring when he cuts a promo like this. This was great. On Dynamite, Hangman, Briscoe, and Powerhouse Hobbs beat Death Riders in an 18-minute main event. Shafir got involved. I realized she basically no-sold the huge table bump. Didn't even miss a show. Hangman flipped out of a Doomsday Device attempt. Mox bit his forehead over the ropes because, of course, he did. Then there was a signature spam before Page beat Claudio Castagnoli with a jackknife cover. Not a finisher, a jackknife cover. Not necessarily against that, but coming off an AEW title win, I'd put my champion over dominantly. Death Riders attacked after the bell, because of course they did. And then Darby Allin appeared on a balcony in a spotlight, which completely distracted all of them. Mox is standing in the middle of the ring. He has no idea what's going on. Hangman hits him with a buckshot lariat. This dude flips over the top rope and walks away. Didn't bump. Didn't sell the finisher. Just walked away.
Dude, not cool.
On Dynamite, Copeland came out to open hour 2. Turns out his name wasn't changed since it was announced and on the bottom third written as Cope. He now has a shirt that says Legend with a D added to it, so it says Edge in the title. Copeland said he didn't save Christian Cage, who was an asshole, and then he recounted everything Christian's done to him since arriving in AEW. Copeland said he returned to go after FTR, his friends who got him in shape when he returned to the ring 5 years ago, only to turn on him. So his goal was to end them for taking 4 months out of his career. Stokely Hathaway came out getting basic heat, saying that Cope would get fired if he puts a finger on FTR due to something about Spike being a liability. I frankly got lost at this explanation. So Copeland attacked the security. One dude ran away, which was actually kind of funny, and then speared Stoke. Shivani literally screamed, quote unquote, "What a moment!" Copeland spearing Stoke. A moment. The promo was solid as always from him. I'd have just let Copeland stand on his own here rather than convolute it with Stoke. He's been a really odd fit with FTR since that union was made. I know they're all friends. It just doesn't really work, at least for me. On Dynamite, Toni Storm appeared on a balcony 90 minutes into the show, immediately called herself, in order, a whore, slut, bitch, skank, trollop, and tramp. The new gimmick with her presentation is that it's black and white with a filter that's allowing the red to shine through. Actually looks great visually. She said the door is open for a rematch with Mercedes Moné and Luther was injured. She said, and I believe fans chanted, "Tits." Then she just kind of rambled. And then Athena appeared on the big screen promising to also become the forever AEW Women's Champion. She announced Mina Shirakawa is also injured, which is apparently true, broke her hand, and threatened to cash in her contract on Tony soon. Great promo by Athena, super believable and threatening. I love that the AEW fans continue to love and support Tony in this gimmick. It remains up and down for me, 1 week to the next. On Wednesday night, it was down. The most basic stuff, all puns she said before, no real direction or emphasis until Athena showed up. It was just kind of an eye roll. On Dynamite, the Young Bucks arrived in an Uber, got the silent treatment from Marina Shafir, and saw someone crossing out EVP on a locker room, replacing it with Matt and Nick. Ricochet laughed at them, and then Don Callis came in saying he hated how AEW was treating them like jobbers for just losing one match. He said Kenny Omega is dead, so he has time to help them. Matt said they wouldn't join his family, but they will take his help. So that's just what we need more of. Don Callis. And they're not going to be in the family, but they're going to get help by him and work with the family. So they're in the family, basically. Here's my question. If these guys are no longer EVPs and so on and so forth, why do they have their own locker room at all? Shouldn't they just be with all the other guys? Right? Am I wrong about that? So then they make an entrance for a match. Their regular EVP entrance gets cut off. And all of a sudden, Comic Sans MS font appears on the big screen. And the guys are called Matt and Nick. And it says EVP with like a circle and a line through it. This was much better than pretty much everything else that happened in the lead up to them showing up, by the ring. The entrance was legitimately funny, turning off the music, the gag with the Comic Sans, the announce from Justin Roberts, all that worked. That was really solid. What followed was a match. Hechicero, Josh Alexander, and the Bucks beat Jet Speed, Bandito, and Brody King. B-plus level match, really good action. Bandito was by far the most impressive and entertaining. He got knocked out by Hechicero. That was the finish. So the ROH champion got beat. Now, I presume that's just going to lead to a match at Forbidden Door or TV before that, or I'm not totally sure, but I don't think they really mentioned that he was a champion losing that way, regardless. So you have the Bucks, right? They're down in the dumps for 2 segments at the start of the show. They're disheveled. It's going bad. They're being disrespected. And then you put them in a match that they win right away. Did anyone think that through? No? Okay. On Dynamite, Kyle Fletcher beat Mascara Dorada in the first match on this show after All In. I didn't have to watch through the match to know the result. Putting this on the show for no reason, it was one thing. Doing it first was quite another. Fletcher won with a flurry, including a brainbuster. Quality stuff in ring, B-match. But no story, man, at all.
It's about nothing.
No story?
No, forget the story.
You gotta have a story.
Who says you gotta have a story?
On Dynamite, Kazuchika Okada beat a jobber in 60 seconds. Callis introduced him carrying both of the original titles. Okada then came out with the unified title to a different entrance that was frankly worse in pretty much every way, zero aura. Okada then called Swerve Strickland a bitch for screwing his friends, who you'll remember he left by themselves without caring about them for months. Swerve called him a bitch back. And that was the segment. That's how AEW capitalized on Okada beating Omega and Swerve winning one of the best matches on All In. 2 guys in the ring, bitch, bitch. This was really a terribly booked episode of TV coming off of a signature event. It's almost like Tony Khan forgot it was happening. And it's like, oh yeah, we have Dynamite. And he did it on the back of a napkin Wednesday morning in like a drunk haze or something like that. On Collision, Mystico beat Beast Mortos in 11 minutes. It was just a match to run. Mystico literally asked the crowd to sing his entrance before and after the bell. The problem was they weren't in Mexico, so they didn't sing. On Collision, there was an 8-woman tag team match featuring the same competitors for the third time. Mina Shirakawa, Queen Aminata, Thunder Rosa, Willow Nightingale beat Athena, Julia Hart, Megan Bayne, and Thekla. Willow got the fall on Julia. Chris Statlander was on commentary. The laziness, just throwing all these women together over and over again, is just ridiculous. On Dynamite, Thekla beat Stat, Queen Aminata, and Willow in a money match that just happened. Another deal involving Stat and Willow with no build into it, despite the fact that they still don't have a firm resolution in their situation. The interesting feud here is Thekla and Aminata, and a one-on-one match would have been great. Or heels versus faces in a tag team affair. At least you could say, okay, it's Stat and Willow, and then it's Thekla and Aminata, and they're teaming up, and you give us a backstage segment to build that. They're arguing with each other backstage. One of them decides, hey, we should fight each other. They get the match made, but none of that, right? Stat pulled out the referee while he was counting a doctor bomb. While she was counting a doctor bomb. The referee's hand actually hit 3 accidentally. And the match should have ended there, but it continued. Willow and Stat, they fought to the back, so maybe we will get resolution there sooner than later. Maybe Stat is going to join Death Riders after all. Sky Blue then distracted the referee, with Julia Hart misting Aminata and Thekla hitting a stomp for the win. The heels held up Thekla's arms after the bell. This grouping, it's certainly a decision. It seems a little bit forced. Thekla is leagues better than both of them in the ring, and I don't necessarily like the idea that she's getting weighed down by them or she needs them to help her beat Aminata. So it could perhaps work if she's going to be like a heavy and the tag team titles are going to be introduced and Julia and Sky are going to go after those. It just seems like something that's bound to be stuck on Collision. On Dynamite, what is now known as the Matriarchy cut a backstage promo, starting with Kip Sabian blaming himself for believing Christian Cage, saying his real goal was to support his brother alongside his mother. Shayna Wayne said Christian must have had trouble getting it up Sunday. Get it? And Nick was her son, her prodigy. Nick said Christian became a liability. And then he kept saying world champions instead of world championships. He's like, how many world champions am I going to win? Like, championships. It's a title. You don't become a person when you win it. He promised to be the new face of TNT and AEW. How many of those are we going to have? This was okay. Certainly far, far less interested in this group without Christian. And lastly, on Collision, what I thought was SCU got a promo package with Scorpio Sky revealing their name is actually Sky Flight. Christopher Daniels said they were strong enough to claim all the titles together. Okay, sure, bud. I'm not sure why they aren't just SCU. It's an established name. Could have sold shirts. People would be really into it. Skyflight's not bad, but you also have Jet Speed, and now they're Skyflight, and it's just their names thrown together. I was kind of into like a new SCU, but apparently not. And that wraps up AEW this week. Like I said, it was really a disappointing show coming out of All In. Just nothing really moved forward. It was just kind of boilerplate across the board. Stuff rehashed, random matches. I expected a lot more. They definitely did not capitalize on it. We're not going to go through the whole ratings, but the rating for Dynamite was almost identical to the rating for NXT the night prior. The difference is NXT on Tuesday went up against the MLB All-Star Game, which happened to go to not extra innings, but something they called a swing off. Whereas this went up against the ESPYs, which is not watched nearly as much as the All-Star Game. So the competition was much tougher for NXT. And they had basically the same rating night to the next night. Now, they're not in competition with one another, but the point that I'm making here is that coming out of All In, a show that was roundly praised, that had all these incredible matches, you would have thought this would have been booked and promoted better and just more exciting, keeping people tuned in. I think something like 6 figures of people tuned out after the opening segment of Dynamite, which is really struggling. So that wraps up the entire week. NXT, AEW, as mentioned, will be back next Thursday in our normal spot for this show. We'll be back Tuesday talking all things WWE. In our podcast feed, we have the Silver King one-on-one with TNA Wrestling President Carlos Silva ahead of TNA Slammiversary. We also have all those instant analysis podcasts for WWE Evolution, Great American Bash, and Saturday Night's Main Event, and of course, AEW All in Texas. So if you missed any of those, make sure you listen to that as well. I'll remind you to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Full-length audio episodes, full-length video interviews, including our newest with Carlos Silva. We'll also be posting the Abyss interview early next week, so keep a lookout for that. Don't forget, here at the Getting Over Wrestling podcast,
It's all about Defy.
so head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we'll read it live right here on the show. Follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, and all of that good stuff. You can also send in questions and comments for the show. Don't forget that. And please, finally, remember, when it comes to the Silver King,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis posts every week. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Okay, that is it for the week. Silver King has done a lot of performance-enhancing audio for your ear holes. It is time for me to take 72 straight hours off. That means Silver King is signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.